Chapter 1. Overcoming Adversity. Learning and Doing. Recently, I was speaking with a pastor who had just delivered a rather critical message to his congregation. I was curious whether or not people were offended or took the criticism personally. The pastor laughed and told me the good and the bad news. The good news was that the congregation was not offended because none of them really thought the comments were directed toward them or that they were the focus of his criticism. The bad news was just the same. None of them thought the comments were directed toward them or that they were the focus of his criticism. Unfortunately, in this life, we only learn from mistakes. Most of us only learn from the mistakes we make ourselves. A relatively few more enlightened individuals can observe the world around them and actually learn from the mistakes of others. The sad thing remains that the people who need to learn life's lessons the most are very often the people who listen the least. This happens because we judge our own intentions and everyone else's actions. Therefore, when the boss is already 10 minutes into the meeting where he is describing the importance of punctuality as you slip into the back of the room, embarrassingly late again, you were able to look at your intentions and console yourself with the thoughts that you were not irresponsible and not the kind of person that is normally late. It's just that the toast got burned, the dog got out, the kids were running behind, etc. On the other hand, when you are feeling self-righteous about being in the meeting on time or even a few minutes early, when one of your colleagues slips in 15 minutes late, in the harsh light of your internal judgment, they are already tried, convicted, and sentenced. You don't know their intentions or their built-in excuses. You simply look at their performance. Since there are scores of people around the world who read this little column in a multitude of newspapers, magazines, and online publications, it is highly probable that you and I are not personally acquainted. Therefore, I can be the one to deliver the harsh news. You are not perfect. When something goes wrong in your world, it is quite likely that you bear at least some of the responsibility for the outcome. In our lawsuit-happy society, we like to see everything in terms of black and white, assuming that someone else is always at fault. In reality, most errors, arguments, and mistakes are the result of several people's human shortcomings, including yours. As you go through your day today, when there are problems or criticisms, don't look for excuses or someone else to blame. Consider it an opportunity to examine your own performance and how you can improve. Today is the day. The ultimate classroom. You have probably heard it said that someone attended the School of Hard Knocks. This, of course, means that they may not have had any formal education, but they learned a lot from living their life. Life is, in fact, the best teacher any of us will ever have. Our past is the lesson, our present is the exam, and our future will be the grades we receive. If we do not learn from the mistakes we have made in the past, we will fail the exam, and our future will be the same as our past. Just like in school, those who do not learn the lessons have to repeat a grade over and over again. It has been said that the definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing while expecting a different result. If you make a mistake, it can either be the end of your efforts or the fertilizer that will make your dreams grow in the future. Studying history is as much about where we are going as where we have been. Those who do not learn from history are destined to repeat it. I am a big fan of my fellow Oklahoman, Will Rogers. He wrote many extremely timely newspaper columns and editorials during the 1920s and early 1930s. He was one of the most respected minds and voices of his time. But maybe the most significant thing about Will Rogers' commentaries is that so many of them are still valid and speak to us today. If you look back at any point in history, you will find that people were struggling with the same things that you and I struggle with today. We have a number of new technological advances that make our lives faster and more convenient, but the issues facing humanity remain the same. A wise person learns from their own mistakes. An even wiser person will learn from the mistakes of others without having to go through the experience themselves. If you watch professional golfers either on television or in person, you will see that they observe the line and breaks on the green as other golfers are putting. This is known as going to school on the other golfers. We need to do this in our own personal and professional lives. Human beings are unique in that we can build on one another's accomplishments and learn from one another's mistakes. As you go through your day today, turn mistakes into lessons and lessons into future success. Today is the day. Creating overachievers. In our society, there is a constant, never-ending struggle for normalcy. We seek to fit in at all costs. The advertisers tell us what we should look like, feel like, and smell like, and there is not enough of a premium placed on becoming outstanding. When we study the lives of overachievers, we find that many of them were faced with a disadvantage or a disability of some type that made it harder for them to be considered normal. In most cases, these overachievers were simply working harder than the rest of the world to be considered normal. But a funny thing happened to these overachievers on their way to normality. It is called greatness. It is important for us to understand that greatness comes not from being 10 times better than anyone else, or even twice as good. It comes when we are willing to invest just a little more of ourselves toward the task at hand. If you were to study the biographies of the great overachievers in history, you would find that each of them had a turning point in their lives where they veered off from what we call average and became great. In most cases, this turning point comes in the form of a disappointment, a disadvantage, or a disability. The next time you are faced with a difficult challenge in your life, try viewing it as one of those turning points that can put you on the path toward the greatness for which you have been destined. In the Chinese language, symbols are used to express thoughts and ideas, and not just individual words. The symbol for crisis has long been identified with the ancient Chinese mariners who viewed crisis as opportunity on a dangerous wind. The same stormy seas that threaten to founder our ship can often propel us toward a promised land that we never before imagined. Today is the day. Persistence and procrastination. Down the street from my office is a very large media complex containing a TV station, several radio stations, and a large conference center. At one corner of the massive building, there is a large fenced area where several radio and TV broadcast towers soar hundreds of feet into the air. Thousands of people drive by this complex every day and have seen the towers so many times they don't even notice them anymore. Several months ago, a troubled young man, for reasons of his own, decided to scale the fence and began climbing one of the towers. By the time anyone noticed this young man perched on a precarious ladder hundreds of feet in the air, it was too late to stop him. Police, ambulances, and emergency rescue workers were called to the scene and began efforts to persuade the young man to climb down from the tower. The young man either ignored them or periodically threatened to jump. As will happen with any large gathering, the media was soon on the scene. TV, radio, and newspaper reporters began around-the-clock reporting of the ongoing activities of the young man who became known as the Tower Guy. This went on for days, and somehow the reporters found things to talk about. The young man became dehydrated, sunburned, and appeared to be disoriented. Finally, one heroic rescue worker was able to communicate with the young man and talk him into coming down. The final media reports described how persistent the Tower Guy was in remaining on his perch for many days. It's important that we don't confuse persistence with procrastination. It is easy to think that persistence is doing something repeatedly or constantly, while procrastination might be thought of as doing nothing at all. In reality, too many of us are like the tower guy, in that we persist in doing nothing of importance, which, in reality, is procrastination, as it relates to the things in life we know we should be doing. Practice does not make perfect, in spite of that old adage. Practice makes consistent. Only perfect practice will make something perfect. Persistence is only a virtue if we are persisting at doing things that matter to us and make the world a better place. Most people perform activities today because they performed the same activities yesterday and will do it all over again tomorrow. Before you do anything as a regimented part of a routine, make sure you know why you are doing it, what it will accomplish, and when you will be done. As you go through your day today, make sure you're investing every moment wisely and not just repeating mindless activities because that's what you've always done. Today is the day. Wisdom for Winners, Volume 2, is an official publication of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, written by Jim Stovall. I'm your narrator, Rich Germain.